Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to introduce who I consider friends today. I got to know them just through connections to the Sierra Club and Corpus Christi area, who are all working on many issues. And of course, I keep up with things via the internet and also the Victorian Advocate. And I became very alarmed many years ago when there was talk of developing 9 liquid natural gas export terminals along the coast of Texas. And at that time, must have been at least 20 years ago, I wrote a letter to the Victoria Advocate and just asked what happens when one of these facilities explodes? What would be the range of the radius of the fireball? Nobody ever answered my question, but it took a long time to get this infrastructure in place. We are now at the stage of what is called the build-up out of the fossil fuels industry, shale development industry in Texas. And that's been going on for 20 years. It started with the Barnett. So now the pipelines are laid, now the facilities are being built, and the major focus is to develop a global trade economy for all these, including raw products like natural gas and oil. In the past, we could only export the products made like gasoline, etc., other chemicals made from these raw products. It was considered the interest of our national security to keep the raw products here. But now, with the development of this global expansion and market by the fossil fuels industry, we are now exporting raw products like oil and natural gas. So I'm going to turn this over to Errol. Errol is the, I call him chief cat herder of the alliance of very active and very fine smaller organizations that are working on individual projects and monitoring their environmental impact, insisting that TCQ and the EPA stay involved and protect the environment of the Gulf Coast, which is really seriously being threatened. Many people agree to that. So I'm going to turn this over to Errol because he is the one who keeps these groups coordinated and working together. And also they have now directly connected with the EPA. And so I thank him and I thank all of the Alliance members down there for the work they're doing. They're really doing it for all of us in Texas and the United States, and in fact, the world. Errol, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sister Elizabeth. Well, my name is Errol Summerlin. Just a little background. I am a former legal aid lawyer working for the poor, providing free legal aid to the poor. I did that for 37 years. And you know, my focus was things like Social Security, disability, you know, domestic violence, all the typical things that legal aid programs engage in. And I did that for 37 years. I also, you know, represented many of the tribes in Oklahoma, where I got my start with legal aid, on sovereignty issues and a number of other fighting the Bureau of Indian Affairs and such. So I was not an environmental lawyer. Okay, I want to start out by saying that. Never was an environmental lawyer and still don't consider myself an environmental lawyer. I consider myself a rabble rouser at this point, having retired. Excuse me. So I retired in December of 2014 and unfortunately saw what was going on here and got involved. I'm one of the co-founders of CAPE. Now, everyone who knows me knows that it's difficult for me to speak in a short time frame, okay? Because the story of CAPE is long and I could talk about it all night long. The evolution, if you will, of how the Alliance grew and the fun, the trials, and the frustrations we have experienced in the battle for the coastal bend is a long story. But I'm going to start sharing my screen here now. Let's see if it makes certain I can do this correctly. Can y'all see that?
Sure can.
Okay. Let's see. This is just a short story. It has no ending, but it does have a beginning, just the beginning. Now, we cannot talk about the evolution of the build out here without mentioning Refinery Row. Refinery Row is 10 miles wide and or 10 miles long, as you can see, probably a mile, mile and a half, 2 miles at certain points. And that stretches along the inner harbor of the Corpus Christi area. Southern Alkali, these folks have been here since the 20s. Southern Alkali was the very first, I guess the very first industry that moved here, and it just expanded from there. Such to the point where it began encroaching upon neighborhoods, the Donna Park neighborhood, the Oak Park neighborhood, which is now gone. And over in the far right is an area called the Hillcrest neighborhood. And Hillcrest is primarily African American, low income Hispanic, and it has suffered discrimination since the founding of Corpus Christi. But essentially what happened is, despite all of the battles that they had fought over the years, the city of Corpus Christi and TxDOT decided that they would build a bridge through the neighborhood. And when they decided to do that in January of 2015, we formed the Citizens Alliance of Fairness and Progress. And rather than making this another Hillcrest fight, we formed the Alliance to reflect individuals and organizations that were concerned about what was going on to strengthen the neighborhoods fight. We proposed different routes, but ultimately the bridge was completed, and there was a settlement and voluntary relocation plan in a Title VI complaint that was filed, a civil rights complaint that was filed. The bridge was supposed to look like this, okay, or is supposed to look like this. But this view is from Whataburger Field, our AAA Houston Astros facility.
Excuse me, Errol, can you hear me? It's Anna. We're not seeing your slides advancing. Can you advance like to your map slide, number 2 slide, maybe? I think you were talking about, were you talking about that picture that's number 2 yet? You see what I'm saying?
Can you see that there?
I can see it all, but it's on your outline screen, just the slide screen, but it's not showing on the main screen. You just need to advance it.
We see the thumbnails. We don't see the main screen.
Yeah, exactly.
On the main screen.
Let's see.
Try clicking on the thumbnail.
Yeah, if you click on those, the ones on your right, you see those smaller versions.
Well, using this full screen, I am okay. Let me try this.
I know. I think you were talking about the 3rd slide. It looks like on the thumbnail.
He was talking about the map of the bridge over the neighborhoods, I think.
Well,
Sits,
It says that my screen share is paused. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what's going on there.
Clicking on the little small picture.
just you click on that second number 2.
Well, I only see the whole thing here, so I'm gonna have to stop share for a minute. I'm sorry, my apologies.
No, they're great looking slides.
Let's see. I'll try this again, and I'll just pull it up differently. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the thumbnails on the left and the main screen there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me just advance them this way. I talked about, well.
There it is. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Now.
Okay. This is the, this is obviously the refinery road that I spoke about. This is the Hillcrest Rising. This was a Citizens Alliance for Fairness and Progress that was formed. This is a copy of the bridge. Everybody sees the pretty bridge there. Okay. That's what the mayor at the time said. We don't care what's going on with the Hillcrest neighborhood, just build us a pretty bridge. And this was the view from Whataburger Field. This is the view from Hillcrest, okay? And right now, this project is 4 years behind schedule. It was supposed to be completed in 2020. And it is now 2 years behind, and it has been delayed again, and it's most likely that it will be delayed probably until 2024, maybe later than that. They're actually thinking that it might collapse. The TxDOT has issued a report that says that this whole thing could fall down, and which of course has everyone in a tizzy. But I spoke about the Citizens Alliance for Fairness and Progress. This is in essence a story that you can find on the Texas Housers network or website. If you call or if you pull up the Hillcrest demonstration project, you'll see a video and everything about their fight against this bridge. But you know, the main thing that I want to point out about the bridge, though, is in the environmental impact statement. They said that one of the main reasons for building the bridge through the neighborhood was to be able to build it higher, 127 feet higher than the current harbor bridge, to allow for crude ships to come in and load up larger ships than what's available right now. And that was a clue to us. That was a clue. And because while we were fighting that, we all of a sudden heard about Exxon coming to town. And in June of 2016, we heard about them. So I immediately switched focus. Actually, we're still working with the Hillcrest neighborhood by the Citizens Alliance, but I changed focus, and we formed Portland Citizens United Against Exxon. And we already had Cheniere, an LNG facility, Verstapini, an iron ore briquette facility that were permitted in 2014, but we had no idea of their magnitude of those projects. Neither one of them was operational at the time Exxon decided to come to town. So Exxon essentially, I'd say they woke us up, if you will, about what was happening. It would be the largest plastics plant in the world of its kind, and it needed 20 million gallons of water a day. So we took to the streets. This was a shot from in front of the HEB. We started attending public meetings of the TCEQ, and in the end, we failed. Exxon got their air and water permits, got their water that they needed, and more than $500 million in tax incentives. So we lost to the Texas largest employer. And of course, happy about it were the CEOs of SABIC and Exxon, and their Rex Tillerson is shaking the hands of Mohammed bin Salman after the signing of the agreement to build this project. So what we were left with, of course, is this. That's the ground flare that went off just a couple of days ago. For 2 days, it flared like that. This is the 10th incident of its kind since they began operation in January. Excuse me. But while we were fighting it, and you know, by this time also, Cheniere had started operation, right? And so this is what we see on the other side of Portland. The flare, the Cheniere flare here, and this is Verstapini, the big black tower next to it, the iron ore briquette. And, you know, this was something we posted. Congratulations, Gregory Portland class of, actually, I don't know if you can see, it's 2024, but they were building these facilities, the modules in China while we were fighting them here. So as soon as they got their permits, they started shipping the modules over here and rushed the project to completion. We still delayed them for a while, but you know, we weren't successful. So during the Exxon battle, we saw the build out advancing with the lifting of the oil export ban and the pipelines heading here from the Permian Eagle Ford shale, expansions of local industries, dredging, and new industries wanting to come here. So in October of 2018, for 4 years next month, a bunch of us got together. We had a group meeting joining Portland Citizens United Against Exxon with the Sierra Club, the local Sierra Club, local Surf Rider Foundation, Tejas, the Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services out of Houston. And that day, TCE arrived, Texas Campaign for the Environment, with canvassers who would fan out the very next day to start canvassing folks on their opinions about the build out. We saw the big picture that day, and after 2 hours of discussion, and we joined together. We recognized that we needed to come together and do whatever we could to fight, with each organization, each individual contributing according to their resources. The next day, within days after this, we were in Point Comfort, supporting Diane Wilson in her battle against Formosa Plastics. And by December of 2000, just 2 months later, we formed the Coastal Alliance to Protect Our Environment. And this is what we drafted as our preamble. Individual members of this alliance come from all walks of life. We're Republican, Democrat, and Independent. We're school teachers and professors, engineers, roughnecks, and retired oil and gas executives. We're geologists and former urban planners. we're retirees and young professionals, but in essence, our lives and life experiences span the spectrum of the workforce that drives our economy and our future. While the alliance organizations are newly formed grassroots groups, longstanding allies of environment and wildlife, each individual group or organization has their own focus. It may be the air we breathe, the health of a loved one, sport fishing, commercial fishing, greenhouse gases, water supply, effluent in the bays, plastic pellets on the beaches, endangered species, cultural recognition, protection of sacred land, tourism and alternative economic growth, the ecological impacts and dangers of large crude oil carriers and marine terminals. So that was our preamble. And then we developed our mission statement. While each will continue to have their own focus, we all share a common concern that the current industrial build out, land-based and maritime, presents multiple challenges that must be met. We are aligned in purpose to protect the health of our residents and our delicate and beautiful ecosystem in the coastal bend. And the mission statement is, in essence, protecting our environment for our quality of life and that of future generations. We immediately started meeting. We had strategy meetings by May of 2019. We unfortunately, soon after that, pandemic hit, right? And as a result, we even there were so many of us at times now that when we went to a TCE public meeting, they had to move it to high school auditoriums. There were so many people that started showing up. But the pandemic slowed us down, but we kept zooming along, if you will, with Zoom. And we showed up at wherever we could in all forums. Once the pandemic was over, we started showing up at fairs and festivals. And these are just a couple of the tables and groups that are now members of CAPE. This one I like in particular for several reasons. Number one is a Cheniere volunteer, the LNG facility here. We tried to get them sign up. They came to the booth and Eddie Canales here tried to get them to sign up to fight the fossil fuel industry. Needless to say, she turned her back. He's holding the pen there for here, sign this. And we were also on the streets. The Ingleside, the indigenous people of the coastal bend who are fighting Enbridge in particular, were taking the streets. And we got tote bags, and we even have a Cape sticker now. So we're now a group of organizations. Can you see the entire screen? Let's see. There are 22 organizations, and as part of the alliance now, we've got funding from a variety of sources. We've been in state and national publications, even featured in a novel called The Autobiography of Plastics, written by Allison Cobb. We've got an in-kind assistance from, that includes expert and attorney assistance from Environmental Integrity Project, Sierra Club, Earthworks, the Center for International Environmental Law, Earth Justice, TRLA, and a host of others. CHISPA opened its office, its Texas office here in Corpus Christi, and TCE has hired several full-time employees who are local residents and now share an office. We meet monthly. 2 standing committees meet every week. Ad hoc committees are formed to address particular projects and activities. So we've got new initiatives such as our Citizens Air Patrol, the Coastal Bend Air Quality Group, and we're working with academic institutions on air and water quality issues. So what of the build out? Well, I'm going to let Kathryn get a little bit more detailed about the build out and who's behind it, who's involved, and what's at stake. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn that over to Kathryn.
Thanks, Errol. Let me get my orientation here. Can you see the screen? Is that the full size one, not the presenter one? Okay, I can never quite tell. Thanks for inviting us. My name's Kathryn Masten, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Ingleside on the Bay Coastal Watch Association, or IOBCWA. And to orient you, we're just across the bay from Corpus Christi. So you can see Corpus Christi is here, and this is Corpus Christi Bay, and the star represents Ingleside on the Bay. So I'll get more into the geography of our little community in a bit. But Patrick Nye is our president, and Jennifer Hilliard is our treasurer, and I was the founding secretary of the organization, and then became its first executive director. And what Ingleside on the Bay is, IOBCWA is dedicated to conducting scientific research and educating our citizens and working with industrial neighbors to the extent that we can to protect the health, safety, and quality of life in Ingleside on the Bay and the Coastal Bend region. So here's a picture of Ingleside on the Bay. It's very small, founded in 1958 as a small fishing village. It was incorporated as a Texas city in 1991, only has about 700 residents, has its own mayor and city council, enjoys beautiful sunset views of the Corpus Christi skyline, which is directly west. And this view is to the east. The city also has its own beach club, marina, and now two waterfront restaurants, very simple barbecue places. It sounds glamorous. And it's also located on the central flyway for migratory birds, so really spectacular. I lived there from 2018, full-time from 2018 to 2021. And left because of the industrial build out and having asthma, and my husband also had health issues. So we moved it there for the beauty. And then if you didn't see it in the previous slide, behind us during that time, the industrial build out, popped up, if you will. It's kind of like mushrooms on what's called the Live Oak Peninsula right behind us. And it started with 2018 Moda Midstream purchasing what wasn't the Ingleside Navy base, and also Buckeye Partners. They all bought up property on this former Navy base site, and it also happened to be a Karankawan archaeological site. And in 2019, as a response to that, that's when we formed Ingleside on the Bay Coastal Watch. And in 2020, we experienced storm surge events of up to 4 feet with every tropical storm in the Gulf, not just the ones that came like Hurricane Hannah that hit down by Corpus Christi, but every one of the 8 storms that happened anywhere in the Gulf, we would see storm surge, and in the worst cases up to 4 feet. And then of course in 2021, Ingleside on the Bay experienced 17-degree temperatures, and we went 48 hours without water and power during the deep freeze of Texas. So got to see firsthand a lot of the climate change and industrial challenges. Our neighborhood changed. When it was a Navy base, the picture at the top shows this. The Navy base had Mexican tiled roofs. It was a really pretty quiet neighbor, and they closed the base in 2010, and that's Ingleside on the Bay down on the left. And then this is a picture today on the lower right showing the three petrochemical facilities now. Enbridge, it used to be Moda, Flint Hills, which has been there for quite some time, and Buckeye Partners. Then also, this is a view down at the bottom. This is a view of our Bayshore Drive right after, this is like the day after Hurricane Laura. And this is one of the Cheniere LNG tankers, about 150 feet offshore in La Quinta Channel, just looking like it's heading right down through Main Street, because Bayshore Drive is our main drive, and it's pushing up the water. Still, we're trying to dry out from the hurricane and the 4 foot of storm surge. But that doesn't slow down industry. And to give you an idea of the changes from, this is actually from Google Earth in 2014. This is what the Live Oak Peninsula looked like. That's Ingleside on the Bay on the left, and the now abandoned naval station Ingleside on the right in 2014. It reverted to ownership to the Port of Corpus Christi. And then this is a very recent 2022 photo of what's happened to that peninsula with the 3 oil export terminals. And that's, of course, due to the lifting of the oil export ban. And so the other part of the story is it went from public to private ownership, this land. And so these are actual, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the news stories that chronicle the story. In 2010, the Port of Corpus Christi took over the naval station Ingleside. In 2012, they sold 800 acres to OxyChem. 2013, Flint Hills Resources decided to expand and bought the rest of the former Navy base property. In 2017, the petrochemical industry is looking to the Port of Corpus Christi to ramp up their crude oil export line of business after the ban is lifted in 2015. In 2018, MOTA buys up the terminal right next to Ingleside on the Bay from Occidental. And I thought what would be interesting to you all is that MOTA was able to do this by through the investments of the NCAP Flat Rock Midstream investment pool of funds. And here's, they were able to come up with $750 million. And this is from some research that we were able to find. And 7 of these investors in that NCAP fund were Texas retirement
Excuse me, Kathryn.
firms. Yeah.
Let me just ask everybody to mute your phones unless you're talking. We're getting some feedback. So thanks.
And so anyway, that's how MOTA was able to acquire the former Navy base, was through that fund. And then they turned around and sold it in 2021 to Enbridge for a $3 billion cash purchase. So about our newest neighbor, Enbridge. Here's a picture of Enbridge from the water, and that's Ingleside on the Bay off to the left. You can't really see it. It's the Karankawan his archaeological site straight ahead, or just off on the left there. That's this was all Karankawan territory, of course, until the 1800s. And Enbridge operates the world's longest and most complex crude oil and liquids transportation system, with about 18,000 miles of active crude pipeline. It's actually a Canadian company, but they already account for 40% of total US crude oil imports. This is a Canadian company. So what has happened is they've decided that they want to expand and build a terminal. They want to build another pier. There's already one pier here, and they want to build another pier even closer to Ingleside on the Bay, right here. And so that they can do more. 40% of the U.S. crude oil imports isn't enough. So we are suing them. We're in the middle of a federal lawsuit against the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that has granted the permit for Enbridge to build this pier even closer to us, and threatening the Karankawan historical site as well. We've also filed a motion to overturn TCEQ's water quality certification, saying, oh, there's not going to be any harm at all to the water there or the seagrasses or anything, when they admit they're going to destroy seagrasses and wetlands. And they're going to mitigate for all that destruction of ancient seagrasses and diverse seagrasses. They're going to mitigate it by creating some new seagrasses 6 miles away. And we already have evidence that the existing ship traffic just from this one pier is already, it's pretty much already destroying all the seagrasses around. And then, as I mentioned, the expansion is also going to be right there in front of the Karankawan site, where there have been over 39,000 artifacts found, and it's eligible for placement on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's why the Karankawa and the indigenous people of the coastal bend have joined us in this federal lawsuit. And here's the two projects together. So more about Enbridge. So that wasn't enough. Expanding with the new pier wasn't enough for Enbridge. No. They're now planning to build a $3 billion facility right behind Ingleside on the Bay for blue hydrogen and ammonia. This will be like the first of its kind. As far as we can tell, they just presented to the Ingleside on the Bay community, and people were pretty upset, as you can imagine, because it's really not known what all this is going to entail. And they're also planning to build a solar energy project on this, covering up what remains of the Karankawan site. And they're also seeking Chapter 313 tax abatements to help fund that because they're so poor. Sorry, but and already, so to tell the other part of the impacts, Ingleside on the Bay, as I mentioned, has already been experiencing, flooding, but relative sea level rise has already hit Ingleside on the Bay. It's a low-lying community. It's already experienced about 1.5 sea level rise since 1967, when our president, IOBCWA President Patrick Knife, his family bought property there. And they're expecting at least another foot by 2040. And that's really in the middle of this curve that you see here. So it could be worse. And it sounds like it's going to be worse. And already with high tide, you can see that, there's already some coastal covering even in the middle of our town because our streets are a little too low. That's occurring just at regular high tides right now in Ingleside on the Bay. But with 4-foot storm surge, this is what the town looks like. It covers, when we have those storm surge events, it covers up a quarter of the city. And most people do live down here right on the water. This is a canal. And then, most of the homes, and certainly the most expensive homes, are right here where the sea level rise is happening. And when those storm surges occur, like they did in 2020, this is what the city looks like. You can't really get to big parts of it. And here's some pictures of some of the storm events. In July of 2020, there was Hannah. August, there was Laura. In September, there was Beta. And in October, there was Delta, but there were some other ones in there as well. The city's also experiencing air pollution. So we're fighting back on that score. And because TCEQ has 0 air monitors in San Patricio County, where up here, where all these, that Errol mentioned several of these, this is where the industrial build out right now is occurring. There's 0 air monitors from TCEQ over here. So we've decided to take matters into our own hands. We've gotten foundation grants where we have 8 what are called SCI monitors that can monitor for a number of pollutants and weather stations. And we've hired our own local engineer who's been an activist in Cape for a long time, who's our local technician to manage those. We're also working closely with professors at the university at TAMU-CC, TAMU Corpus Christi, to do ozone monitoring, methane monitoring, carbon dioxide, and we have a couple of students working with us of theirs as well. And here's an example of what we're seeing. Just August. This was just August of this year. We're seeing over nearly over 3,000 ppb parts per billion of VOCs, when really there's no safe level of these VOCs, these volatile organic compounds, but we're seeing over 3,000 sustained in Ingleside on the Bay on the monitors that we're picking up. And EPA doesn't really have any outdoor standards on this. So we're pushing back on all those things, but this is what IOB is living with. And we're working with the professors to try to figure out where it's coming from. And that's just one of the pollutants. There's others as well that we're monitoring. And we're working with Earthworks. Earthworks has come out. They're here now. They're in Ingleside on the Bay as we speak, doing another like week-long visit of going and what they do is they take a FLIR camera, an optical gas imaging camera, and look at the different facilities in the coastal bend. And they looked at 24 locations last time and found leaks everywhere. And the cameras show you what you can't see with the naked eye. And so this is an example of the kinds of footage that we get. And then he'll write up these incidents and have TCEQ investigate. So we'll be getting, in December he was here, and now he's here in September. And we'll have some good comparison studies to see if any of these things got fixed. And then in the big news, we also, Ingleside on the Bay was part of a one-year planning grant through a National Science Foundation grant with the University of Texas at Arlington through the program called Smart and Connected Communities. And as a result of Ingleside on the Bay working with the University of Texas at Arlington researchers, they're developing a dashboard that gives us visibility of the different monitoring efforts going on throughout the community, air and water. And as a result, we wound up getting we were awarded just recently a 4-year full integrative research grant for almost $2.5 million. So that's going to really help us move forward with our monitoring programs. Now, who's the force behind all this build out? I wanted to kind of lay the stage for my experience in Ingleside on the Bay, but what's going on? Who's really driving this? And it really falls at the feet of the Port of Corpus Christi. And here's a recent article in July in the News of San Patricio County about the Port of Prosperity. And Sean Strawbridge has been the CEO since 2018. And that's really, that's like I said, that's when I moved to Ingleside on the Bay. That seems to be when this, ramp up really got started with MODA situating here. And it's Sean Strawbridge is, if you want to figurehead that it seems to be the man behind the effort, it's this guy. And his feeling is that any port development without exception is a positive thing, certainly for tax revenues, he says. And it increases overall prosperity and livability. And that people who get in our way just don't know what they're talking about. And his pay has doubled since 2018. He makes almost $600,000 now, making him one of the highest paid people in the public sector and among one of the nation's top earning seaport executives. And the port is now the largest port in the nation based on total revenue tonnage. I think they used to be like 8th. And so just in this short amount of time, they've risen to number 1. And just last year, it was an 81% increase in liquefied natural gas, LNG exports. And one of our Cape members, John King of the Port Aransas Conservancy, points out this growth is not without controversy. There's no collaboration going on here. And he finds it amazing that this economic argument always wins. And so this notion about job growth needs to be challenged. And we're trying to do that as well in the coastal bend. So to the Port of Corpus Christi, and this is from their Facebook page in July. It's a beautiful and active day at the Port of Corpus Christi. This is right beside Ingleside on the Bay. You can see, got the label. There's Ingleside on the Bay right here. This is beautiful, right? And, for people who have, spent all their retirement earnings to live here, and to enjoy paradise, that beautiful view of the Corpus Christi skyline. It's kind of been ruined. And you can imagine what it's doing to the fish in here and the seagrasses. It's just devastation. But our port city is thriving. Well, maybe City of Corpus Christi 10 miles away, but not Ingleside on the Bay. And so the strategies that the port uses, this is what, it boils down to, these are 4 of their strategies. I think they have many strategies, but one of them is that they purchase land on or near Corpus Christi Bay that they then sell or lease to petrochemical companies. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a bit. They'll dredge the ship channels so that ever larger ships can be fully loaded. They're trying to stuff them with as much oil as they can right inside the bay, as close to, the shore as they can. Then they also are constructing desalination plants inside the bay so that these industries can get unlimited fresh water. And they're working with local economic development corporations to attract even more thirsty and polluting industries. So their first strategy, I'm going to kind of build this out for you. Here's the beginning map, and Ingleside on the Bay within it, located at the confluence of these 2 ship channels. This is the Corpus Christi ship channel that goes all the way over to the inner harbor, and the La Quinta ship channel where those LNG tankers go right there in between to go to Cheniere. Before the oil export ban was lifted, there were just a couple of industries, Oxy and Flint Hills, and then up here was actually the alumina plant. That's the red. These are some remnants of the red mud beds from eons ago, I guess, that they're still trying to remediate. After the oil ban, we had Exxon, Vestalpine, Cheniere, Exxon Sabic, Kiewit. And I may be off a little bit on these, but these are, I know that Enbridge and Buckeye came afterwards, and something called Midstream Texas, and there are probably even others, but this is an example of how quickly the build out has occurred. And these are the pink items are just permits that are pending right now, that in the Cape Alliance, we're all collectively like commenting on various permits, and these are ones that are currently underway. Air permits, desal permits. We're trying. Errol does a great job of keeping us informed about what's going on, and and then there's also, that's just the TCEQ permits, and then there's the Army Corps permits. So it's not enough just to have the state stuff. We have federal permits, and now I think there's also going to be some coming down from the Department of Energy, and there have been some offshore projects through MARAD. So now the blue is what I wanted to show you. These are some examples of the port's properties, and you can see they own 1,600 acres of submerged land, they call it. This is where they're trying to get industries to lease submerged land for their mitigation efforts. So when they destroy seagrasses down here in Ingleside on the Bay, like Moda did, and now Enbridge, they work out an arrangement with the port to lease land up here, submerged land, so that they can grow new seagrass, and that way they're all good with TCEQ or the Army Corps, right? So we lose out, they win all around. And then the port is also buying up all the land it can as it comes available, trotting all the way up to the airport in San Patricio County. But they own a lot of land as long as they can get a clear path to that water. And Judge Krebs in San Patricio County, he's the highest county official, he finds that it's a bit disturbing that the port's practice of purchasing county property and then leasing it to businesses ultimately costs the county money because they're exempt from taxes. So here you've got this public entity buying up land, not paying any taxes, then turning around and either leasing it or selling it. And according to Sean Strawbridge, the CEO of the port, he says, well, port is just like any other government agency, sovereign, independent, and tax exempt. And so what do they own? They call themselves a landlord port, And they currently own 66 parcels in San Patricio County valued at $135 million. Half of San Patricio County's property tax revenues are abated, 8 billion out of 16 billion, due to various industrial agreements that have been struck. But yet San Patricio County is underrepresented on the Port Commission, with having only one commissioner out of 7. The others are appointed in by Nueces County and the City of Corpus Christi. And San Patricio right now is bearing the brunt of the new industrial development. And, you know, really, and there's no, the costs of these negative environmental impacts that are heaped on the nearby communities aren't borne by the industries. They're not paying for these things. Instead, they're rewarded. They're getting these massive tax breaks. It's just really bizarre. And what the port is doing is they're entering into all these memorandum of understanding that sound good, kind of, you know, now they're trying to race toward achieving net zero. And we're concerned that these are just some greenwashing initiatives for green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, carbon capture, decarbonization. So the second strategy that the port has is to deepen and widen the ship channels. This is a map of their current Corpus Christi ship channel deepening project. It was actually approved like back in 2003, but they didn't get in, and it was approved for oil imports back then and for agricultural exports. And that's what the environmental impact statement was based on. They didn't really get very far with getting it done until after the US oil export ban was lifted. Then they decided, okay, we're not going to become a container port after all, because Exxon wanted to buy this property right up here that was supposed to become a container port area. So they decided to sell the property to Exxon instead, drop their idea for becoming a container port altogether. And then in 2018, finally, the channel deepening began. And so they just finished this first leg of the channel deepening in 2020. And I didn't make the connection until started doing research for the latest channel deepening permit, that this completion in February 2020 coincided with all those flooding events that we happened to see in 2020 in Ingleside on the Bay from every Gulf storm, no matter where it occurred. So they've ended the channel deepening from 45 feet to 54. They just finished that in February of 2020. They're currently doing this leg, again, going roughly down to, well, they're going down to 54 feet here. So that's happening as we speak. And they're doing these other pieces as well. So the whole project is scheduled for completion in 2023. But that's not enough. They've already applied to go back to leg 1 and further deepen it to 75 feet plus or minus 2 or 3 feet. So it's roughly going to be an 80-foot deep channel here is their proposal. And this is, we just ended the comment period on this with the Army Corps, going from 54 to almost 80 feet. And this is the only entrance to this bay system. So it's pretty terrifying. We're already experiencing these storm surge events for Ingleside on the Bay. And the predictions are, even their own research says that there's going to be inundation of properties and increased tidal surge, especially in here. And it's just a mess. And they haven't even assessed the impacts of this whole channel deepening. So this is how the port works. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So
what about also, you know, like do they like factor in that water is rising? I mean, you know, with the melting of the glaciers and different things like that. I mean, is that even talked about or factored in here?
It is, and they're the solution, because look at all that dredge material they're going to be digging up. They're going to be able to place that dredge right in front of the beaches here and around precious redfish bay state scientific area, it's going to be the savior of the coastal bend because of the dredge material. That is literally how they have spun this permit with the Army Corps. Now, of course, they got, I imagine, thousands of comments from us, but that is literally what they are saying. And that's what their project is all about, is they have these different beneficial use, they call it, beneficial use placement areas. And then this big one here, that's really where they're dumping most of it, is just right offshore, so that it's going to be causing more erosion and whatnot. I mean, it's just a mess. But yes, thanks for asking the question.
It's Anna. We do, maybe if you could finish up.
Yeah.
Minutes, just so we can have a few more minutes for questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't keep track of when it's was I supposed to end at 3? I'm sorry.
No. It's you can have a few more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
This is fascinating. So it's just.
Yeah, and you're welcome to have the slides in case, but yeah, so these are some of the benefits. That's that beneficial use of dredge material. And here's the consequences, some of them that we've pointed out. Among many comments on all kinds of things, but the unsafe navigation is a big one right here. This is Harbor Island. They're planning to put in 2 more oil export terminals. Remember, they already have the 3 over here. They want to put in 2 more here. They want to deepen it so that they can be fully loaded. And they need to drag like 75 feet down when they're fully loaded. And this is also where the ferry goes to Port Aransas. This is where people fish and recreate. This is, people's playground in Texas. So it's just a terrible thing. Their third strategy, which I think you have heard about, is the desalination plans. And here are 5 desalination plants that are planned for inside Corpus Christi Bay. This one, they're going to the TCEQ is deciding on the 22nd what's going to happen with it. We suspect they're going to issue the permit with some caveats. Ingleside on the Bay is leading the charge on these 2 permits. We have been granted a contested case hearing with TCEQ for the port's desalination plant. This is the City of Corpus Christi's planned desalination plant. And then the city is planning one over here, and Corpus Christi Polymers is also pretty far along. They've been trying to get their desalination plant for a while. So 5 of these things, discharging hundreds of millions, totally, all combined into the bay. And so we're, that's been a real unifying fight for us in Cape. Then their 4th strategy is working with economic development corporations to expand and contract and to attract and expand industry. And I wanted to bring to your attention, this used to be called Port Industries of Corpus Christi, the PIC. They've changed their name just recently to the Coastal Bend Industry Association, and all the red members are petrochemicals. So they call it diversification. So it's a diversified group of industries in the Coastal Bend. All right. And the CCREDC, the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation, has 151 different investors. Some of them are, they're not all petrochemicals at all. I just wanted to point out that the CCREDC works real closely with attracting these petrochemicals to the Coastal Bend. And they tout $52 billion in regional investment, and the San Patricio County Economic Development Corporation, I think, is kind of more passive, but they tout that $30 billion in capital investment almost exclusively from petrochemicals. And so in conclusion, the Port of Corpus Christi and the CCREDC are the primary catalysts, but especially the port for this rapid industrial development. These Texas retirement funds appear to be a main vehicle, and I imagine you guys know all about that, for financing these big petrochemical projects. That's where those funds are going. And I'm sure you're also familiar with the blacklist that the comptroller has for anybody that boycotts the energy firms. And he's proudly proclaiming that on his website. And that's how he is also the one that grants the certification for the tax abatement programs. And we're fighting back. Errol's just doing a phenomenal job, and we all love Errol, herding us cats down there. And getting the EPA engaged has been a real godsend. They are coming through, filing comments with us. Sending letters, it has been amazing. And then we need your help, of course. I guess, as I understand it from having talked with Sister Elizabeth a little bit, understanding that flow of money, stopping that however we can, so that we can save the planet, not just the coastal band. Really appreciate it. And here's some links if you want more information. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having the time today. And
I'll just speak for the group to thank you both. It is just so shocking. And when you go into the depth of detail you've gone into, that even the Texas Teacher Retirement Fund was the major contributor, which I was not aware of.
I was not either, and I'm a recipient. I'm an early retiree, having been a professor. So
there's so much,
yeah.
and we do have a list of companies that came out of that initial port brochure. So we're going to really look at this very hard. But I do want to offer about 5 more minutes, I think we have, to other people on the call for questions for either you or for Errol. So if you could just hang on for about 5 more minutes. We do have a business meeting that you're certainly excused from once we finish that time, but let's spend about 5 more minutes now. So anyone with questions to either Kathryn or Errol? Anyone in the group? There's so much great information here. It's just, I think research.
Kathryn,
go ahead.
You mentioned at different times about comment periods. Is there a way to go back and look at those comments?
Yes, there is. It's TCEQ does, at least on the TCEQ side. The Army Corps is not very good at this, but TCEQ has all the comments that have been made on their site. There is a trick to searching for them. Well, it's not really a trick, but I'm happy to share the instructions if you guys would like to know how, because you can learn a whole lot from reading those comments. And, so you just basically go to the TCEQ website and to their, I'd have to go look, but I'm happy to share that information, because I think it's one of the great things that citizens of all kinds can do is review them, file their own. You don't have to live in a place to file comments. But if you go to the TCEQ homepage, under view pending matters and file documents, you kind of have to, you can track the status of any matters. And it's this CID, the Commissioner's Integrated Database, that you're after. They keep all the comments in there, and you can go back historically and see, and all the, not just the comments, but all the other actions that have been taken on a particular permit. So if you have the permit number, that helps.
Right, the permit number is important because there are jillions of them there. Well, that's an exaggeration, but there are a lot of reports there. So to know how to get to the specific one you want to research, you would use the permit number. Is that correct?
Well, there's other ways. You can also do this by, applicant name. So if you want to look at all the Port of Corpus Christi ones, you literally can type in their name. You can see I've been doing this a lot. And then search for, I always click on include filings and include all correspondence. This one is this is the Harbor Island desal permit, but you can do it by docket number if there's a contested case hearing going on, different ways to search. So I encourage you to get familiar with the TCEQ CID, the Commissioner's Integrated Database. It's really a great resource. They're shocked, honestly. They're so shocked that we're so knowledgeable now, and that we're commenting, and that we're actually not just, we're giving really meaty comments, because we have scientists now that are posting things. There's me. I shared a paper from one of our TAMU-CC professors, Dr. Montagna, on all the desal. So I put it on all 8 permits. you know. And but you can see who else, you know, who else commented on the whole thing. Display all comments. It's a little bitty hidden thing here, but you can actually get to all the comments. So I do encourage you to play around with that.
I just want to say, Kathryn, your network and your work especially is a perfect example of responsible citizenship and what can happen when citizens rise to the level of their own responsibility and stop just watching Monday Night Football and letting the government agencies handle everything for them. We find out they really can't be trusted. And so this terrific example of responsible citizenship and everybody bringing their talents together, their experience together to shock the agencies. Oh my gosh, they're awake. This is good.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we didn't wake up until Errol, I think, came on the scene with CAPE, maybe, you know, a lot of stuff got slipped through the cracks, but we're there now.
I think we've got time for about,
Wonderful, thank you.
oh, go ahead. There was another, one more comment or question. Errol, was that you?
Yes, it was. I just wanted to add that the you know, in terms of investments, you know, Kathryn pointed out the retirement systems, et cetera. But one other thing that I want to point out, she gave you a link to the Corpus Christi, the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation. And they have a list of their investors. Go to the other one, where you had, I think you had a link. It was a different, I'm not really sure which one, but it doesn't matter. We can get you that particular link and make certain that you see it. But if you go to the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation, that's where those 152 investors right there. That's the one we're talking about right there.
Yeah, I created a little shortcut for you. If you know, it's tinyurl.com/CCREDC investors.
Yeah.
And then another
Great.
one for the investments.
Right.
So
we just point that out because there are a lot of supporting organizations, a lot of banks, as you can see. That this is just a quick. I mean, there are 150 of these listed there. Okay, that are all involved in these build outs. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you both so much. I do hope we can maybe get, these are complicated PowerPoints, but have access to them in to send out to our members that are not able to be on the live call with us. Is that going to be possible?
sure,
Yeah, that'd be great.
at least for my part.
Well, and at least, well, you know, we can wait to see how those come through, but and then that couple of key links that you mentioned would be helpful too, because we will send out this recording and for as much information as we can to our members. And, you know, we do see these companies, we have members with holdings. I was on a call with Cheniere a while back. So didn't know about all this, but, you know, this was in a whole nother, this was about their exports, shipping their exports to Europe. So it was the European side, you know, where this all begins is here. Anyway, so this has just been so helpful, so illuminating. And I think the courage that you all have, both of you, to speak up and to spend your expertise and your energy on getting us all informed about this. It's just wonderful. So thank you.
Anna, could I say one more thing too for the sake of people who may be listening? In the beginning of this big plan that the industry had for commercializing the natural gas industry in the United States, it would result from the fracking, and it was led by Chesapeake, I think. The big pitch was coal was supposed to be going, and getting rid of coal plants and CO2, et cetera, is the big culprits in global warming. And methane, natural gas, was pitched as the solution. It's so much cleaner. actually, it's the most destructive element in the ozone right now. So all of the leaks of methane or natural gas that goes into the production and shipment and offloading, onloading of all of this in any way, shape, or form is putting more methane into the air. And that is 86 times more destructive than CO2 ever was to the ozone. So it may be cleaner when you burn it than coal in terms of the smoke and the emissions. But in terms of the destructive capacity to destroy our protective ozone layer and increase and actually accelerate global warming is worse, 83 to 86 times worse. So if we're investing in natural gas, thinking that we're helping the environment and that's the green way to go, we have been sorely misled, okay? It's the exact opposite. I just wanted to toss that in there.
Yes, thank you. That's so true. And I think green hydrogen, quote unquote, too, is another upcoming issue, but so much more to look at. And I think just knowing this is happening in our coastal bend, to me is just, and it's happened so quickly. But it's really shocking. And I'm so pleased that you all were able to spend time with us today. So I'll give you again my personal thanks. And then we're going to continue now with our business meeting. So thank
you.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
God bless.
Bye.
Okay, Sister